Hey everybody, this is Sarah from PiinPoint. We're going to get started here. Thank you so much for joining our call here today. This webinar is focused on looking into the power of mobile location data, and we're really excited to be able to share some information with you all about this today. Our presenters are our co-founders, Adam Saunders and Jim Robeson. They'll be speaking over the next half hour a little bit about what you can use this data for, the privacy concerns around it, and how the data is collected. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining our call here today.
Thanks, Sarah. We're excited to be here.
So a quick agenda before we hop right into it. Probably, again, like I said, the next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll be looking into a few different items here. For those of you who don't or do know about mobile location data, you probably already know that there are a lot of opportunities for the ways that you can apply it to your work. And for those of you who haven't maybe heard as much about it, what you do probably know is that there are people out there and vendors out there that are collecting information on you somehow, and that information is being used in different ways. So as crazy as that is, it definitely represents a great opportunity to tailor and customize experiences for retailers to their customers and really take advantage of that data. So one of the things that we'll be speaking to is how the data is collected. We'll also be looking into privacy and anonymity, and then talking about how you can use the data sets as well. Before we get started, just a little bit of quick housekeeping. It looks like there's already been one person with a question or information about the chat. So if you've got questions throughout the next 25 minutes, feel free to use the chat tool up in the top of your webinar here. And our moderator will be happy to answer any questions that have come up along the way. And then one final plug before we jump into it. If you're looking to put a couple more webinars into your schedule with PiinPoint, we do have another one coming up around a new product that we're developing called GeoSearch. GeoSearch is a really exciting new tool that helps you match trade areas for expansion. So if you're looking for certain site criteria like population thresholds, proximity to anchors or competitors, and traffic data, that's all compiled into a really great tool to find you matches. So keep your eyes peeled there. All right, without further ado, let's get into this, the power of mobile location data. So maybe, Adam, what I'll do first is ask you if you can explain a little bit more about how this data is collected and where PiinPoint is getting information from.
Sure. So what I'm going to do is talk about two types of data here. The first being telecom tower-based data that we use in Canada, and the second being GPS-based app data for the US. So in Canada, for the purpose of having the best representation of the entire population, we use observations provided by a major telecommunications provider. And what they do is they create this data by triangulating the connectivity of phones throughout their network of towers. They then use models to determine the locations and over time the movement patterns of people. Along with this, they have information about those people, like the home and work locations, for example, as well as, let's say, visits to retailers.
Okay, whoa. So it sounds like there's a constant stream of data being collected here. Is that fair to assume? Like, are there specific frequencies tied to those observations?
Yeah, for sure. So in Canada, the frequency is sub-second, and the accuracy ranges from about 10 meters in some urban areas and outwards as we get more rural.
Gotcha. And in terms of the observation, what determines how they're collected or where they are collected?
Yeah, so by creating a geofence or, let's say, a query area, we can extract individuals that have either traveled through or stopped within a query area. We can do either of those, whether they've stopped for some amount of time that can be chosen within a query area. And then we reference this information that we know about them, like let's say their home location, for further analysis. And just a note, as telecom providers have a detailed knowledge of their market share geographically, they're able to extrapolate these observations to represent 100% of the population.
So if there's, in Canada, we're looking at telecom providers for providing this information. In the case of the U.S. market, where does the data come from there?
Yes, so in the U.S., we partner with a provider that has GPS-based observations of people moving around versus the tower-based that I just spoke of. So they do this by partnering with apps that require location and reselling their data in aggregate. So to give you an idea of the types of apps that source this data, there are apps from categories like weather, travel, e-commerce, navigation, for a few examples. And of course, this GPS data comes directly from the individual user's phones with the geolocation as well as the accuracy of that location. So it does vary, but usually it's under about 10 meters. And this data is then queried and used in the same way as I mentioned with the tower-based data.
So, and you're talking about collecting and proximity of those collections being under 10 meters. That definitely raises the question of privacy. One thing we hear a lot is concerns around anonymity of the data and being able to track people right down to their home locations. If I'm super concerned about that and I've got location apps on my phone to check weather, to check news articles, what happens in this case if I turn off my location settings?
Right. So in the U.S., removing location access from apps that are partnered with our partner will remove you from those observations. In Canada, however, it's a bit different. It's more of an opt-out with for the people that are customers of the telecom provider that we use. So in that case, they would choose not to be tracked. So I'll also talk a bit about privacy and how that's preserved in the data and the analysis here. And I'll cover a couple topics. So the first being, let's say, identifying information. So I want to note that identifying data like names, email addresses, and phone numbers are not stored or connected to the data. What happens is a unique ID for the device is created, and this is used to string together observations through time. Now, of course, this would still allow individuals to be tracked from, let's say, a home location or a workplace. So the data is also aggregated to small community areas like dissemination areas in Canada or block groups in the U.S. And these are, of course, the standard geographies used for the census releases, which prevent determining, let's say, income for a specific household. So at the point of the analysis output, the home and work locations are provided as these dissemination areas or block groups, while the visits, for example, to a retail location are allowed to remain at the full accuracy.
That's really good information. I know for sure we've heard a lot of concerns in that way, so it's good to know that there's a lot of safeguards put up around that. I guess the question, once we know that the data is anonymized and those privacy concerns are removed, the question becomes, what can we do with this data and how is the industry going to be using it? Maybe for that, I'll turn that over to you, Jim, if you can speak a little bit about the value of this data to retailers.
Sure. So in terms of what we've seen to date, we've heard everything and been able to demonstrate to a number of retailers and commercial real estate firms, understanding who your customers are and where they're coming from. And again, I think a lot of us in the retail industry have often struggled with this. So to date, I will note something that we have seen is retailers using in-store surveys. We've also been able to see and hear how sometimes throughout the year, a retailer will also write down a customer's postal code at the cash, or even using loyalty data. So these are a few ways we've seen retailers using customer data, but part of the problem with that is that it doesn't really capture all of the customers. And to really understand or see the customer's journey to and from your location, it's not being shown in the data. So that's where I really believe there's a true opportunity with mobile location data. So maybe I can speak to a variety of opportunities that kind of go beyond just understanding who your customers are and where they live. So this data that we've used to date will help define everything from the differences in trade areas throughout urban and suburban markets. We can break down retention rates at individual locations, and we can also show the impact of cannibalization on existing stores and take that even a step further to seeing where shoppers go before and after visiting a location. So again, there's absolutely no question this is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what is possible with mobile location data. So I have a few slides. I can just maybe touch upon how this data is being used in PiinPoint today. So the first one is understanding who your shoppers are. So we can show customer trade areas and origins. So for example, what area would capture the home neighborhoods of 50% of my customer base? Or what does my trade area look like for 30% of my clients at work? We can also filter this data even further. So for some retailers in, say, the QSR space, it's understanding the difference between AM and PM customers. Or for big box or groceries, frequency of visits or the time frame. So it may not be as important to look at the summer months, but let's break out time frame over the course of the year. And then, of course, the home and work locations is always important to filter by.
And just to add something else that is pretty useful, beyond understanding the distances that people travel, we can also tell you about the demographic traits of those people. So because we look at the customer home locations that are actually contributing to your sales, you're able to drill down to the DA level where each person lives and build up a demographic summary of your customers.
So when you talk about demographic profiles like that, what would be the difference of a demo profile put together from mobile location data versus a tool like something that does psychographic segmentation?
Yeah, so psychographics are generally some aggregation or summary of demographic and some other variables for an area, looking at the block kind of outwards. Here, what we're able to do is look at the actual customers and put together a specific demographic summary of your customers for each of the chosen locations. So for that, the benefit of working with these demographics for mobile data analysis versus those psychographics is that we can determine the demographic makeup of the actual customers and then further look into the shopping patterns and behaviors versus aggregating those already pre-grouped areas. So really what we're doing is creating a psychographic profile for each of your locations.
Gotcha, cool.
Maybe what I can do is just touch on one final thing. And that's we're seeing retailers wanting to understand how often their customers visit the location and then breaking that down. So what you can see here is just a frequency of visits based on a daily, weekly, or monthly amount. And we can also start to identify trends where there's a rapid increase or decrease of visitors. So this has been extremely impactful, again, to look over the course of the year and what those trends would look like.
Awesome. It'd be great if we could see this in the app. Would you be able to show that to us, Jim?
Yeah, happy to walk you through what the data would look like in PiinPoint and how it can be used. So what you see here would be a select group of some existing locations within the PiinPoint interface. Now, with every single one of these sites, by clicking on them, we have the ability to also view the visitor origins. So we'll use the Colonial Plaza Mall as one example. For the sake of time, I won't go through all of the features. I'm really going to focus on the trade area and how we can build that out, looking at the heat map and then specific demographics tied to this location, as well as the brands that customers affiliate with. So by clicking the View Visitor Origins here, we'll see the trade area populate, and I believe it's about 10% of all of our customers. So now I have the ability in the top right-hand corner to look at the daytime customers, evening, or throughout the course of the day. I can also toggle between 20% of all of our visitors to 40, 50, and so on. So let's stick with the closest 20% of our visitors. We'll look at the visitors' home locations. This is a heat map, but we can also view this at a block group or DA level. So we'll turn this off, save the trade area, and now what we have the ability to do is look at a shape summary. This shape summary will take into account such things as market penetration. So we can see of 20%, the market penetration of this trade area is approximately 7%. So 4,600 people of about 65,000. Our retention rate for this individual site is about 46%. And here's just a couple of variables that we've pulled out ourselves around income and population density, which you can see here. I can also look at the customer brands. So as I mentioned, for this specific location, we know that 22% of all visitors also go to McDonald's. Now, this is compared to about 18% of the total population. And there's Starbucks, Wendy's. Obviously, there's certain brands that are going to stand out, but with PiinPoint, we have the ability to also filter by category or look at other brands that wouldn't be the typical national chains like a McDonald's and Starbucks. So I'll stop here, but this is just a quick example of how the mobile location data can be used in PiinPoint.
So I guess that's kind of the end of our formal webinar, but happy to share more information with anyone following our talk here today if there is interest in learning more. You can definitely take a look at our website, piinpoint.com/sell-data, or contact a member of our team. And then upon contacting us, we can explore some other opportunities to do custom studies and talk about getting this data into your hands. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Really, really appreciate you taking the time here today. I hope this was insightful, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Have a great rest of your day.